and welcome to Conversations with the Quick Flick Critic. I'm your host, John Smistad. Each week, I introduce you to a wide range of remarkably creative and inherently interesting people, representing a broad spectrum spanning the world of entertainment. I invite you to listen, learn, laugh. Today's guest is KIRBY VOSS. KIRBY is a screenwriter and a filmmaker, and he's got a lot of other cool things going on that we're going to talk about during the course of our conversation. But first of all, welcome to Conversations with the Quick Flick Critic, KIRBY VOSS.
John, thanks so much. I'm thrilled to be here. Looking forward to having a good, nice chat with you.
Absolutely, man. This is going to be cool. I've watched KIRBY's latest film, and I've reviewed it on my blog, the Quick Flick Critic. The name of the film, which is a suspense drama, I think is an accurate description, and KIRBY will talk about that. The film is called We All Think We're Special, and we're going to get into that. But KIRBY, like I say, is a screenwriter, filmmaker, but he's got a filmmaker. But he's got a lot of other stuff going on. It's really, I think, interesting and compelling. I wanted to go back to when you first realized that you really love film. And this is interesting. And I've not seen this whole movie. I've seen parts of it. I've got to see the whole movie. For some reason, I thought the movie was like 3 hours. It's like an hour and a half. But in your bio that I discovered, it says, your life changed irrevocably when you saw Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, as a 14-year-old kid. Now, Dr. Strangelove, if you haven't seen it, is a 1964 black comedy. It skewers the United States, USSR Cold War, which was in full raging mode at the time. The late, great Peter Sellers, who is recognized as one of the greatest actors of all time, I still think he's underrated at that, plays 3 different roles in this film. KIRBY, I'm going to shut up now and let you talk. You saw Dr. Strangelove, 14-year-old guy. What was the impact, and where did it take it from there?
So even before that, I had been wandering my school library, and I was bored, and I saw a copy of a book called The Great Movies by Roger Ebert. And I said, okay, this sounds kind of cool. I like great movies. Who doesn't like great movies? And in it, he's got a collection of essays on some of the films that he thinks are the greatest of all time. And the essay for Dr. Strangelove just talked about how funny it was. And I said, well, this kind of sounds interesting. I'm always looking for a good comedy. So I ordered it from Netflix, and when I was doing that, Netflix was still mailing DVDs. So I got the DVD in the mail from Netflix. I popped it into my laptop. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I was just spellbound at how funny it was.
Yeah.
But on top of the entertainment value of the film, I think the film made a really compelling argument. Nuclear war in general is generally started or instituted by male insecurity. Right? The men and the generals, the president of the United States and the premier of Russia are all these really pathetic characters. And they're all just deeply insecure men who clearly have kind of this bizarre sexual dysfunction. And because of this, they're trying to overcompensate. And the only way they can overcompensate is through nuclear war. And to me, this was very funny. Especially when this was happening. This is the height of the Iraq War, the height of the Afghanistan War. There's a lot going on. Our nation was at war. And it was kind of a eureka moment for me when I realized, wow, film can be both very entertaining, right? Because I'd seen Transformers, I'd seen Batman, I'd seen entertaining film. But this was the first time I realized it could also be profound. It could be real art. It could be something that was more than just a diversion. Yeah. And I said, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Wow. So that really started me on a journey. I'm very lucky in that I had that light bulb moment.
Boy, no kidding. And then from that point, you went on to the film school a few years after you were 14 and were inspired by Dr. Strangelove. You made a student film called Love Me True. I've seen the trailer. I've not seen the film. It looks really, really professionally made for a student film, and this really struck me. And this is a guy that I've talked about with other filmmakers because he's an indie film darling. He's a hell of an actor. He's been an A-list actor. He's been in big budget films, but he seems to have found his groove, and that's Eric Roberts. Eric Roberts is omnipresent, and I watch mostly independent films, KIRBY, like yours. when I watched We All Think We're Special. Talk about how in the hell did you get Eric Roberts in a student film, and then talk about working with him, because he seems like, with all he's done, and like I say, he's just a real pro's pro. He seems very gracious and almost humble. Go ahead and talk about making that film. Again, the film is called Love Me True. You made it as a student filmmaker, and then working with Eric Roberts, if you would, please.
Sure. So I'm afraid my biography kind of truncates some things. I've been blessed with an abundance of experiences. Yeah, I went to Loyola, New Orleans for college, and it wasn't actually film school. I was studying English. They didn't have a film program, but I had read Robert Rodriguez's Rebel Without a Crew book. And he talks about how he made a film for $7,000 and got into Sundance. And I said, well, that sounds like a good idea. So I actually made my first feature when I was 18, and it was called The Pain of the People. Our entire production budget was like $200, right? I bought a little DSLR and didn't pay a single person, talked my way into bars on Bourbon Street and hotels on Canal Street. And we made this film. Cool. Showed it to 100 people, sent it to every film festival in the world, and everybody told me it was just terrible, except one person. Like, one person was like, okay, there might maybe be something here, maybe, like, come back to me with another script and you're a few years older.
Yep.
So I went off and I wrote the script for Love Me True. You know, I was in college, I was heartbroken at the time, so I wrote a romantic comedy, right? Yep. Came to this producer and they got interested, so they agreed to finance the film. So we did have some financing, but that was only because I had already created a whole feature film. I mean, it wasn't a super abundance of financing, but it was enough that, like, we could make it a SAG film. We could, like,
other people's money, yeah,
get a real camera, right? It wasn't a ton of other people's money. I was working as a telemarketer the summer before we did it, right? So I'm still, you know, washing cars, telemarketing, trying to make this film happen.
Wow.
But we got really lucky. And the nice thing, so I had considered going to film school for a while, and it was very expensive. So I ended up going to school in New Orleans. But the nice thing about being in New Orleans is, almost by definition, you're a big fish in a small pond, because especially at that time, there wasn't a huge film presence here. Mm-hmm. So I was able to network and meet almost all the film people in the city in a relatively short amount of time. And you make friends, and a friend's friend had previously been an assistant director on a film Eric Roberts had done. So we had the role, we reached out. He was extraordinarily gracious. His team was really very friendly. I like them a lot. I consider them friends now. Wow. He read the script, he liked it. We flew him down, and we shot him out in just a day, but we got what we needed. He's extraordinarily talented. It was a lot of fun working with him, because, you know, he'd previously done Dark Knight, and he was telling me he had just done Inherent Vice with Paul Thomas Anderson, who's one of my favorite directors. And this was, like, just ecstatically cool for me, right? Yeah. But we had a great time making that film, learned a lot. It's absolutely a student film, but it was a great learning experience.
Boy, no kidding. You got financing outside of your own bank account, and you got a guy who, as my dad would say, has a pretty clear understanding of what he's trying to accomplish. In Eric Roberts, to be in your film, in your movie, that's a place somewhere beyond cool. So yeah, so we move forward, and the movie that they released last year, 2021, that I've seen, it's available on Amazon, by the way, which is where I watched it, is We All Think We're Special. A lot of questions I have about the movie, a lot of questions about the movie, but is essentially about a raging alcoholic who has lost, as most raging alcoholics do, has lost the capacity to manage his own life. And he has a friend who cares about him and wants him to stop drinking. And the friend takes upon himself to go upon a personal crusade to detox his alcoholic friend. You, as a filmmaker, I always say a filmmaker's claim, but you claim, the movie's based on a true event, on actual events. So I want you to talk about what that may have been, what that was, and how you were inspired and springboarded to make the film. And then we'll go into specifics about the film. But yeah, if you could just give us an idea, how did you become aware of the original event? What was it? And then how did you decide to pursue a project and make a film about it?
So that's an excellent question. I've spoken to a lot of people, and some of this was kind of under the the cloak of anonymity, and I've obviously promised not to reveal too much about what's actually going on here. And certainly some dramatic license was taken. But here's what I can say: I'm not an alcoholic. I don't have any experience with alcoholism. Nobody in my family is an alcoholic. But
Okay, I was going to ask
think
that. Okay, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Okay.
No, none of us have any real experience with alcoholism, but I do have experience with addiction of a different sort, right? So heck, at some point, giving up your entire life to make indie films that make no money is an addiction, right? At some point, you can fall in love with somebody and be addicted to a person. You can fall in love with an idea and be addicted to a person. Yeah. And as I look around, I see many, many people do this, and we have these crutches in our lives. And it really fascinates me, the different crutches that different people use, and some are socially acceptable and some aren't. Right? Obviously, we as a society don't condone heroin use or alcohol, but people who are constant gossips, we tend to. And everybody has something, I think, that they need to fill this hole. And so this idea of addiction really interested me. Mm-hmm. And then I threw myself into the research, right? I threw myself into alcoholism. I spoke to alcoholics. I went to meetings. I saw every movie I could, read every book that I could. But there's a documentary called Haircut, HAARCU or KUT, I think, and it's about heroin detox, actually. But it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, and almost nobody's seen it. It's a criminally underrated film. So I put it out there. If you are looking for a really, really good documentary, it's almost like We All Think We're Special, except it's real life. It's documentary. It was a bunch of friends who filmed themselves as they're trying to get their friends to detox from heroin.
Wow. Wow.
So I pitch that film whenever I can, just because I think it's criminally underseen. Yeah. But I really became fascinated with this idea of addiction. And look, I don't think my opinion of the film is any more important than anybody else's, but to me, the two main characters are really just different sides of the same person, right? What we're really looking at here is kind of a battle between the id and the superego, right? We're really looking at how a person is able to come to terms with who they are. Yeah. So I think we can look at the film through a couple of different lenses, but alcohol is really just the metaphor for what I think is a bigger battle that we all have inside of us.
Yeah. Talk about the two principals in the film, because most people aren't going to know who they are, but talk about them by name, please, because they were both really good in this film. I hope they should get further work, because they're damn good performers.
Thank you. I think they're both doing really well right now. One is my good friend William McGovern. He was actually the lead in my last film, Love and True, as well. So I'd worked with him before. He and I had a very good relationship. He's out in Los Angeles. He just had a nice role in a show called The Thing About Pam, which I think was on NBC. But there was a Renee Zellweger show.
Absolutely.
And he's doing very well. Good. The other principal is my friend Jared Bankins. He lives here in New Orleans. And he was just, he works constantly. He just had a really big role in a Pierce Bronson film, and he is doing, he's a video game adaptation called Twisted Metal right now. And every time the guy texts me, he's working on something else. So they're both working pretty frequently, and I anticipate both of them to have very long and successful careers.
Yeah. Were they on board with what you're? I mean, obviously you're running the show there with the film, but did they understand what you wanted to get across to us as an audience?
I think so. So when I first met Jared, I told him that I wanted to do my vision of Persona, which was a film done by Bergman, a Swedish film that I really, really liked.
I need to see it.
And he immediately got that, right? He clicked with that immediately. Okay. And I think Will did as well, simply because we'd done a film together previously, right? So Jared's, I think, got more kind of visceral understanding of addiction, and Jared plays the addict in the film, right? So I think he's got an understanding of kind of how that works. Yeah. And because Will and I have such a good basis, I like to say that if the director's talking on set too much, he's made a mistake in pre-production, because you need to make sure the entire team is on the same page before you start filming.
Great point.
So for both my cinematographer and our production designer and my co-writer, and certainly my actors, I had to give just shockingly little notes, right? Because we had worked together, we had spoken. I don't do rehearsals. We hadn't done any rehearsals. We hadn't done any camera blocking, but they knew the tone that I was going for. I had shown them 4 or 5 films, both tonally and visually, that I was going for. And I think that the majority of the director's work is going to take place in pre-production, right? You want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And at that point, you just kind of let them loose.
Yeah. Understood. And you did a hell of a job of doing that. And obviously your two principal actors, everybody in the film was quite good. And the film is, it's going to hit you pretty hard. You talked about filmmaking in Louisiana. I talked to some filmmakers recently who filmed in Louisiana. It seems like lately, and there's been films in the past, but lately, Louisiana seems to be a hot spot for making films, independent and bigger budget films. Obviously, the government of the state is all about, listen, we want you. We want you coming here making films. What we want is you boosting our economy, and they seem to be ambitious and aggressive about that in Louisiana and perhaps the New Orleans area. I've noticed in particular. Can you talk about Louisiana and the filmmaking industry marriage, I guess, now?
It's actually spectacular, and I've been here pretty much for the whole thing, because there wasn't much when I first came here in 2010. But we have some of the most generous tax credits in the country. If you are coming here, you are guaranteed to get a very healthy return on your investment just from the state. My day job, I'm going to plug here. I am the executive director of a group called the Cool Cooperative, COOL Cooperative. Yeah. Oh, excellent. Yeah. Okay. Yep. And what we do is we help young people get jobs, work in the film industry. We're a nonprofit organization, and we help young people work in the industry. And we've received tremendous support from the state government, right? The state has made it a clear priority. Louisiana started off as really only having 2 major sources of income, and that was, energy, oil and gas, and tourism. Yep. And the government has decided, I think with really good reason, to make the film industry a significant source of revenue. Right now, we make the 3rd most films in the country. My understanding is that New Mexico's 1, Georgia's 2, Louisiana's number 3. Wow. And we're hoping to continue growing that. Yeah, we're very proud of that. It's a filmmaker-friendly place. We've got a lot of talent here, and it's a lot cheaper to film here than it is in a lot of other states.
Yeah, that's very cool. And obviously, Louisiana knows it's a great benefit to the state, and that's has been happening, is happening now. But it sounds like it's going to become even more prominent moving forward, which is great for filmmakers all over, but certainly in the state of Louisiana. I wanted to talk about the Cool Cooperative, and I want to read the description off the website. Cool stands for Creating Outstanding Opportunities Locally. The Cool Cooperative is an organization dedicated to helping inner city youth, as you just mentioned, Kirby, with film industry specific workforce development. We offer summer programs, after school programs, and hands-on training in film production. What a cool initiative, what a cool purpose. Where did this spring from? How did you start this cooperative, and what inspired you and motivated you to make it reality?
It wasn't my idea, but I was a founding member. So it actually happened during Love Me True, which is my 2nd film, the one with Eric Roberts. We had a pretty limited budget. So instead of hiring a bunch of union guys, we hired a bunch of recent college grads who couldn't get work in the film industry because they had no experience. So the basic trade-off was, well, we're probably not going to be able to pay you as much as we should, but you're going to be able to have something on your resume with a real actor, a real production company. You're going to learn the skill, and it's going to help you work. And it works tremendously well. A number of people that we hired, that their very first job on Love Me True, are still working and just doing very well for themselves in the film industry. Good. So for my producer, who co-wrote We All Think We're Special, her name is Felicia Stollard. She's a very special lady. This was kind of a light bulb moment. Why don't we just systematize this? So that was about 8 years ago, and we have been chugging along ever since. I've been involved in one degree or another since then. But now what we do is, we're not trying to make the next Spielberg. We're not trying to make the next Paul Thomas Anderson. We're trying to get students who wouldn't necessarily have a chance at college or jobs outside of the minimum wage, have an opportunity to make a lot of money in good union jobs, making movies in New Orleans and Louisiana.
Great. And that's seems like a doable goal. And you you guys are busting your asses, obviously, to make sure that happens. It's all cool. Perhaps the greatest thing about that, Kirby, is the entertainment industry, as the late great George Carlin, the comedian, used to say, is all about dig me, you know, and it is. He was talking about show business, but that's what it is, and everybody gets that. And a lot of people can't get outside of their self-contained, what has to happen for me. This is getting way the hell outside of that, and you realize, you and the team you work with the Cool Cooperative, it needs to be about more than just me, right?
Well, I think which is kind of trite, but a rising tide raises all boats, right? I didn't say that right, but yeah, I think that especially New Orleans because it's a relatively small city, has an understanding of community. We have an understanding that we need to rely on each other, and poverty hurts everybody. And instead of consigning certain classes or types of people to certain jobs, which is just kind of a terrible, scary idea, the idea that we could do something like as fun as making movies while supporting and raising our city up, I think is really extraordinary. And we've had tremendous support from the community, from the government, from schools, and obviously a lot of student enthusiasm. So we're very excited about the program.
As you should be, and good on you and your team. Again, it's called the Cool Cooperative, creating outstanding opportunities locally in New Orleans and I would imagine around Louisiana as well. You know, I want to go back to your latest film, because I think I know, and maybe you want to keep it ambiguous, and I get it, because that's most directors don't want to tell people what their film is about unless it's, you know, blatantly, starkly obvious. We all think we're special. My idea is that this guy who had let alcohol completely take over his life and was destroying it, thought he was special enough to be able to drink all the damn time, and it wouldn't be a problem. He didn't see it as a problem, nor would it ever be. Am I on the right track with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And that's something that it's easy to recognize that all addicts feel that way. I think it's more difficult to realize that all people feel that way. I think, you know, look at study after study. Everybody imagines that they are above average at most things. Most of us think that we're above average friends. Most of us think that we're above average drivers. Most of us think that we are above average intelligence. The fact of the matter is 50% of people are below average in each one of those things. That is just a mathematical fact. But for all of our vices, we have, and I don't know if it's humans' greatest weakness or their greatest strength, we have this incredible ability to rationalize. We can rationalize just about anything, right? And I'm sure that there's a great evolutionary purpose to this, but no matter what rejection or goal or hope you have, humans can rationalize it. And when that becomes self-destructive to the point of end stage, late stage alcoholism, obviously that's a real problem. So the film looks at it through that lens, but I would suspect that I failed as a filmmaker if it doesn't hit the audience that this film isn't condemning somebody else, it's condemning myself. And I would hope that the viewers also at least consider how these thought patterns exist in their own life, right? It's not a feel-good movie, but we all have these thought patterns, and we all, I think, need to, at some point or another, try to shake ourselves out of that.
Yeah, it's generally healthy to do so when you're in that situation, certainly when alcohol has turned your life into a living nightmare. I wanted to talk about an experience that you had, and that is abroad in Shanghai city, China, where you were a cinematography professor at Shanghai Vancouver Film School. How did that come to be for you? And just share your experience of working among the Chinese and teaching cinematography in that class in Shanghai City.
It was absolutely spectacular. I am a writer and director by trade, and there's a website called InkTip, and every week they send out job postings. And The Vancouver Film School is a very well-known, very prestigious film school. They've got a campus in Shanghai, and or an extension in Shanghai, and they had been posting for jobs. And so I got this email. I sent an email. I speak Chinese, so I think that helped, not fluently, but decently.
Wow.
I think that helped me kind of get my foot in the door. I've studied cinematography pretty extensively, and it was kind of kismet. It just worked out. So I went over there. I had certainly one of the best times of my life, and it was great. The day I showed up, they handed me a key to a studio, and the studio had over $500,000 worth of film gear. And I said, okay, well, here you go. This is your studio. I said, oh, well, that doesn't suck.
I'll take it, man.
Yeah, I'll take it. Okay, works for me.
All right.
Yeah,
Let's go.
why not? Look, if this is a burden I have to carry, I'll carry this burden.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, looking back, it was a really privileged time because they paid for my housing, they handled all the visa stuff, and I just kind of woke up. I went to class, I taught, I studied, I made movies, I thought about film, and look, I love the people of China. I loved my time in China. I think it's a fascinating city. This was in, 18, obviously before the world changed, but technologically, they were about 10 years ahead of us, and it was just a really extraordinary and exciting time over there.
Cool. And obviously, you know the climate between the United States and the Chinese government, the Communist government. As much as you want to talk about it, and if you don't, that's fine. I get it. But you've had personal experience that most of us will never have. What was the atmosphere in China? As I don't know, as clearly as you can communicate to us, if you'd like. And how did the Chinese people strike you? Because we lose sight all the time of the people who live in countries, i.e. Ukraine, and the guys, generally the guys who are running the show. Does that make sense to you? And what was your perception of what you saw in China?
Yeah, so I am going to be a little careful with what I say here, but let me take a step back. I was fortunate enough to study abroad in Taiwan while I was an undergraduate. I actually wrote Love Me True in Taiwan.
Wow.
So if you're familiar with the geopolitical situation between China and the people, or Taiwan and the People's Republic of China, there's obviously a lot of tension there. But what I want to really emphasize first and foremost is your point about the people. And I love them. They are decent, good people who are welcoming and hospitable. Certainly there are cultural differences between Taiwan and mainland China, but in both cases I felt welcomed. I felt understood. I thought that people made an effort to understand my very bad Chinese. And I would be honored.
Kirby is awesome, but yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, it's fun. I love learning it. Right, I think it's really fun to try and engage with a language that's just so radically different than anything you've experienced. Yeah. I would be honored, and I hope to visit both of those places again. Right, I really hope to visit both of those places again. Okay. I will say that my personal opinion of both the United States government and the Chinese government, not to make a comparison, but we both have work to do in terms of human rights. And I think that human rights are an integral and a valuable part of how we view the world as Americans. Human rights should be and are for us the primary consideration when it comes to how we form a more perfect society. I think that it doesn't matter what our GDP is. It doesn't matter what our geopolitical standing is. It doesn't matter, going back to Dr. Strangelove, how large our nuclear arsenal is. If we don't have an understanding of the other person as a human being, living a human experience with dignity.
Yeah.
And I think that we do ourselves a grave disservice if we forget that. So there's that. But I also believe very prominently that cinema is a tool for growth. Cinema allows us to see each other. Cinema is an ability, or is perhaps the preeminent way for us to recognize and be cognizant of the humanity of, kind of the other, right? Saeed's the other. So I believe in the power of cinema to make us see the humanity in foreign cultures, and I think that's important.
Very well stated. Yeah, Kirby, and there's a few people on this planet who connect with and understand and agree with the essence of what you're saying. What are you working on now? Can you give us an idea of what you're working on now, and what may be next on the horizon for Kirby Voss in terms of your creative output and a film coming down the line, perhaps?
So I've got a finished script, or mostly finished script, that I'm really excited about. It's actually my first horror film, and it's called Job, and it is a modern story of the biblical book of Job, which
wow. Okay, cool.
You know, not to from my own personal perspective of the religious story, if you're not familiar with it, God and the devil have a wager. They gamble over the fate of this man Job's soul, and God says to Satan, "You can torture this man as much as you want, and I am willing to bet that he won't renounce me." And so for the whole book, Satan just tortures this man. And to me, that's horrific, right? I think that most exegesis would say that this is legend, if not myth, and that there's a greater lesson here. But I think that if we're looking at it literally, it's horrific, right? And so I think that it really opens itself up to dramatic interpretation. I will say that funding for that has not been as easy as I anticipated. So I'm still working on that. I don't know if the film's going to happen or not, but I am working on funding for that.
Yeah, go for it. Somebody's got to help you. Okay.
I'd like to think so. I think it's a pretty compelling story. I think that horror tends to have a pretty good ROI anyways. And I'm also in my free time working on it's kind of a mix between political thriller and a little bit of a satire on papal elections. Actually, what happens when a pope dies and how we elect a new pope, which is a very, I think, fascinating thing. It's highly orchestrated. It carries the burden of both political elections and, religion. And I think that there's a lot going on there that most Americans don't necessarily understand. That makes for great drama.
That's I love both of the premises that you just described for your future perspective films. And I'm not above any genre, but it doesn't seem like you're enamored by superheroes punching each other in the face. You've got a little more, a little deeper intention and intellect and interest, frankly, in doing things that maybe resonate a little more with the human condition. I admire.
Well, I appreciate that. I think part of that is probably my disposition. You're right. Part of that is probably the nature of the funding, right? It takes some money to make a superhero film, right? If you've got relatively little money, you can do these things. I do tell people my dream film, if I could direct any film in the world, it would be a James Bond's movie. I would be more happy than anything to do a Bond film.
Good.
But yeah, in general, if I could have anybody's career, it would be Paul Thomas Anderson's, right? I mean, it would be mine. But I think the type of scope and the kind of perspective and worldview that he has is something that, or Kubrick before him, I think, or Bergman, right? I mean, these are the types of filmmakers for which I aspire.
You're not messing around with role models there. Yeah.
No, and I've been told often that I don't do myself any favors by picking my role models here, but that would certainly be the goal.
Well, I think you do, because you want to do things that are special and resonate with people, and obviously you want to make money. I mean, that's the point of making a commercial film. But I think it's great that you know what you want to do. You know what you want to put on film. You know what matters to you, and you're doing that. And your ideas that you've described, that I've watched one of your films, are fresh. Alcoholism has been dealt with before, not in the manner that you did it, and that's why it struck me.
Thank you.
Yeah, it did, as a film that's doing more than just showing a drunk guy who can't handle life.
Well, to that point, I want to,
Yeah.
I think it's really a valuable conversation, and this conversation is a breath of fresh air to me, because to be perfectly blunt with you, the film radically underperformed. It didn't play at any of the festivals I thought it would get into.
I'm really surprised by that, because I've seen movies, and to each his own, and everybody perceives how they see a movie on their own terms. But this is really a good film. It's not my job to sell your film, but that's astonishing to me that a festival with all the festivals, that some didn't say, yeah, we want this as part of our lineup.
We didn't get accepted to a single one. And we got some excellent reviews from Film Threat, gave us 9 out of 10. They called it an excellent film, which was very flattering. But
Yeah.
I think part of it was the timing, right? Nobody was particularly interested in watching the film about alcoholism while a global pandemic was raging. I kind of get that, right? I can appreciate that our film was like the anti-zeitgeist. But it has been really interesting to me. We released almost a year ago. Interest is starting to pick up. I'm having more people talk about it now than they did a year ago. And so it's really interesting to me that it seems like it's very, very slowly finding its audience. And I hope that continues.
Yeah.
But I will say I was kind of flabbergasted by our reception at the festivals. I was expecting something else.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to me to see how that works. And certainly as an artist, right, learning to deal with that and at some point brush it off and at some point learn from it and move on has been something that I've had to reckon with.
Yeah. No, I don't blame you. This is your baby, and you created it. Again, it makes a difference to you. It matters to you deeply, and I think it sounds like it already is one of those films that's going to gain momentum as it's been out there a while, and hopefully people like me and other people who've seen it and says, listen, this is my opinion, certainly, but here's why I think this movie is worth your time and your investment on all levels. So all the best with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Kirby, all the best with your career moving forward. You've certainly got some interesting stories and interesting ideas bouncing around in your creative mind that I want to get out to us in motion picture form in the future. And that's a lot to look forward to. I want to thank you, Kirby, for being with us. This has been, I hope it's been fun for you. I've enjoyed it. And I know our audience, I got a hell of a kick out of it too.
John, this has been an absolute pleasure, been the highlight of my week. And all I can say is that I'm looking forward, hopefully in the next 18, 24 months, coming back and discussing my next film. I don't know which one it'll be, but I hope to come back with a new film pretty soon. I
hope both of those that you described. They both have really cool cool storylines and plot ideas. Our guest that we have been speaking to here for the past better part of an hour is Kirby Voss. Kirby is a screenwriter. He is a director, a filmmaker, and perhaps most importantly, when all is said and done, I think you may understand is his work with the Cool Cooperative, creating outstanding opportunities locally for inner city youth. A lot of them, looking for a future beyond what they believe that may mean, that may look like to them, and offering them work in film production. And that is beyond a worthy cause. That is, I think, in many respects, vital. Kirby Voss, again, has been our guest. That will do it, then, for this episode of Conversations with the Quick Flick Critic. Thank you for watching. I am your host. My name is John Smistad. The show live streams every Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Rude Rangers TV. And also want you to be aware that you can download the Rude Rangers Unite app on really pretty much any platform that's available to you. Some of the more popular ones, obviously, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Google Play. Again, the app is Rude Rangers Unite, and you can watch Conversations with the Quick Flick Critic live as well through those apps. Again, every Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So until next time, listen, learn, especially in today's world, really the personification of any point in time in our world, but certainly now. Wow. Goodbye, everybody.